Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. May I draw your kind attention, please? Uh, we completed two sessions during the pre-launch period. Uh, the first was on tourism, and the second was on joint ventures, business enterprise, and economic cooperation. Now we are entering into another important area, that is educational opportunities and cooperation. In this session, we have the privilege of having Professor A.K. Das, Vice Chancellor, Utkal University. And may I now request Professor Das to please come to the dais and chair the session. Professor Das, please. I would request Professor Ajit Mahanti, National Fellow, Indian Council of Social Science and Research, and retired Professor JNU to come to the dais. He is an eminent psychologist. May I now request Mr. Binod Das, Secretary, Odisha Private Engineering Colleges Association, and an entrepreneur, to please come to the dais. Besides, we are supposed to have Dr. P.K. Pradhan, who is an eminent cardiologist, and Professor Tushar Kumar Nath, Chairman Odisha JEE, Joint Entrance Examination. They are expected any time, but without wasting any time, may I now request Professor Das to start the proceedings. Professor Das, please.
For a seminar of this kind, where two countries are involved, we are looking at evolving the ways to go forward. And education is possibly one of the easiest ways to go forward, because it is there and the scope of collaboration are enormous. And therefore, both our Sri Lankan brothers and our Indian fraternity, I believe the topic is educational opportunities and collaborations. Now the first one, we look at opportunities. As I understand, the Sri Lankan education pattern today is something similar to Indian, because they have gone with World Bank, a RUSA kind of system, and therefore I believe that there is some similarity in both educational opportunities. I am sure Mr. Binod Das will look at this, particularly in technological and engineering education. The other part, which also can start immediately, the collaborations, are research collaboration, joint studies, because there are intellectuals on both sides, very evolved universities, and particularly, as I have told yesterday, Utkal University is a highly multifaceted university offering multiple opportunities, departments that we have which are really advanced studies, centers of advanced studies, and therefore things can be put in place for collaborations. So let's look this session in terms of two very good scopes for way forward of this. One is the educational opportunities both in Sri Lanka and India, and the possibility of collaborations between specific areas of study. So may I now request Dr. Mahanti to start this session.
I somehow, looking at the program, thought that this session is more directed towards technical and higher education, looking at the list of speakers that was sent to me. And I thought I would be the lone speaker speaking on primary education and collaboration in primary education between Odisha and Sri Lanka. In fact, I would be harping on a collaboration that is ongoing in a way, and reiterating some of the possibilities that exist for collaboration between Sri Lanka and Odisha. As I say this, let me engage in a personal reflection. Sometime around early 2010, soon after the war had ended in 2009, I got a call from UNICEF to come to Jaffna to head a program for a large number of children who had been out of school because of the disturbances in the area for a long time, and it was urgently required that these children be put through some kind of possible crash courses, most likely in their mother tongue Tamil, in order that they can be soon mainstreamed into the regular system of schooling. I was excited about the possibility because all my life I have worked on mother tongue based education for children, and I said yes. But then it turned out that, understandably the problem was so urgent that UNICEF wanted me to join in about a month. I think they contacted me in March and wanted me to join in April. I said I can come and start the program, initiate the program, build up a team and set up the initial preparations, but it will probably be at least 2 months before I can join because I had my prior commitments with the Jawaharlal Nehru University where I was working. But I can understand the urgency, and they wanted somebody to join by 15th of April, and finally I had to say no. So that's a regret I always carried because that was a cause which would have been closer to my heart, would have been close to my ideological position in respect of mother tongue education. But then the opportunities did come, and that is probably what I want to share with you today. I will begin with a quotation from the speech of a former minister in Sri Lanka that I had the opportunity of attending in 2013 in Cape Town, South Africa. Let me start with the quotation, then I will tell you the details of it. Language has been identified as central to revitalizing the relationship between communities in post-war Sri Lanka. This is a quote from a lecture in the 10th International Conference on Language and Development in Cape Town, South Africa in October 2013 by the then Minister of National Languages and Social Integration, Sri Lanka, Mr. Vasudeva Nanayakara. In that particular conference, I was a plenary speaker, and I also had by then developed some kind of interest in Sri Lanka. The minister there reiterated Sri Lanka's commitment to reconciliation and achieving social cohesion, nurturing the shared national identity that celebrates and diversity that celebrates Sri Lanka's culture and languages. Language links are in a way vital to the issues of national integration both in Sri Lanka and India. And this is, I would place before you, a potential area for mutual collaboration. I am talking about the links between language and education. And I will, in a minute, tell you why I think this link is vital both for Sri Lanka as well as for Odisha. I had a long discussion with the minister and the officials who had been accompanying him to the South African conference. following his talk, primarily because by then we had some mutual interests. The National Multilingual Education Resource Consortium, or NMRC, in JNU, of which I was the founder director, had already been contacted by the Sri Lankan government, Mr. Sunimal Fernandes, who was the advisor to the president at that time, who had visited us in NMRC, for mutual consultation on its new trilingual project in education. At this point, let me say a few words on Sri Lanka's language policy in education for our Indian colleagues. I am aware that I will gloss over some of the very specific details, which of course would be much better known to our Sri Lankan colleagues. Sinhala and Tamil are the major languages with some official status varying at different points in the recent history of Sri Lanka. In 1956, the Official Language Act introduced a policy of Sinhala as the official language with some official role for Tamil, particularly in the northern and eastern provinces. In fact, the official position of two languages continued to be debated, over the years, as English quietly, surely, but certainly became a language of choice and language of aspiration. Following the Tamil movement and the war, a Lessons Learned and Reconciliation Commission, LLRC, was set up. In 2011, LLRC actually recommended the new trilingual policy in Sinhala, Tamil, Tamil and English as the official languages and languages in education. In the policy framework of 1989 and afterwards, and also after 2009 in particular, when the conflict ended, Sri Lanka went for a trilingual framework with different roles for Sinhala, Tamil and English, and promotion of literacy on all three languages. That is crucial to remember, because in most parts of India, we are in fact in a process of education in which multiple language skills are promoted. The National Plan of Social Integration of Sri Lanka in 2012 sought to integrate language and communication, promoting trilingualism through education. In Sri Lanka, let me add, about 75% are Sinhala speakers, 25% Tamil speakers, and out of the Tamil people, about 10% know Sinhalese, about 10% of the Sinhalese speakers know Tamil, and about 30% of the Tamil speakers know Sinhala. Therefore, it's a quite a multilingual, a trilingual kind of a situation, very characteristic of the Indian conditions, let me add. Now, besides Sinhala and Tamil, English is the language growing in its importance as a linked language in Sri Lanka. One of my PhD students from the University of Colombo, Asantha Attanayake, who did her PhD with me in JNU on English language teaching and learning in Sri Lankan universities, she actually found out how English was growing in its importance and how English language had become a language of aspiration for the average students in Sri Lankan universities, regardless of their own level of competence in the language, which varied quite a lot, as the study by Asantha showed. But in any case, it would be necessary for us to remember that Sri Lanka is a multilingual country, and we at the National Multilingual Education Resource Consortium, we recommended a model of mother tongue based multilingual education in Sri Lanka. In fact, mother tongue based trilingual education, to be more specific, for Sri Lanka. On the basis of extensive school visits and interaction with different academicians, policymakers, and various institutions such as the National Language Commission and Institute of National Languages and Training, and school education authorities, and several field visits to Jaffna and other Tamil areas, as well as Sinhala speaking areas. My colleague at the NMRC, Professor Minati Panda, who is now the chairperson of Zakir Hussain Center for Educational Studies in JNU, who is herself from Odisha also. She actually did the visit because I couldn't come at that time because of my preoccupations. But on the basis of this, we recommended a model of multilingual education for school system or school education in Sri Lanka. In this model, children are to begin literacy instruction and early schooling in their respective mother tongues, Tamil for Tamil children and Sinhala for Sinhalese, as the medium of instruction. Other languages, such as the second language, either Tamil or Sinhala, and English, are introduced early in primary grades, so that all children acquire grade appropriate skills in 3 languages by about grade 5 or 6. Since mother tongue based multilingual education is a possible aspect of trilingual policy and the new educational and societal goal for Sri Lanka, Odisha comes in as a potential partner, and I will tell you why.
Dr. Mandi, maybe you may have to.
I will take 2 minutes actually, not more than that. Odisha is a pioneer state in India where mother tongue based multilingual education is being successfully tried for all the indigenous tribal children since 2006. In the multilingual education program, tribal children have their mother tongue as the medium of instruction and the language of early literacy. Odia as the second language is introduced as oral language from grade 2 and for literacy development from grade 3. English also starts from grade 3, initially for development of oral competence and then for reading and writing. Mother tongue continues as a medium of instruction till grade 5 and from grade 6 onwards, Odia is the medium of instruction. Odisha MLE is evaluated for its positive impact both by NCERT and longitudinal studies of NMRC and several other independent bodies who have evaluated the program. And therefore, Odisha is seen as a success story for mother tongue based multilingual education, promoting trilingual competence in tribal languages, the mother tongue, tribal mother tongues, and of course Odia and English. Let me add that Odisha model has also been adopted in a neighboring country, Nepal. In 2009, I and Tobesh Kutnav Kangas, one of the leading linguistic human rights proponents in education in the world. We were invited by the Finland government, who was supporting Nepal's primary education program in mother tongue at that point in time, and we developed a policy framework which was subsequently accepted by the Nepal Constituent Assembly and has now come into the new constitution which has just been adopted. Therefore, and Odisha, the Nepal team actually visited Odisha to look into the program in Odisha. Therefore, it is my contention that Odisha has the necessary know-how, expertise, particularly in multilingual education, mother tongue based multilingual education, promoting trilingual skills. It has the expertise for teacher training and material development, teaching learning material, as well as textbook development. So considering that kind of expertise that Odisha has in implementation of multilingual education programs, I believe that this is a potential area for collaboration, and Odisha can be a meaningful partner in Sri Lanka's striving for development of multiliteracy and multilingual skills in 3 languages, Sinhala, Tamil and English, through educational reforms and capacity building in multilingual education mode. Thank you very much.
Then we'll look at it at the end. Sir, Mr. Das, maybe 10 minutes target.
First of all, thanks to Kalinga Foundation, Mr. Samir Kumar Das and Professor K.K. Basa for inviting me and giving me opportunity to speak about the opportunity in technical education in Odisha. Myself is an entrepreneur. I run almost 3 engineering colleges, 1 school and 2 industries. So I am I call myself as edu entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur point of view, I can tell you I will just confine my point to 3 main topic, that is background of technical education in Odisha, then what is the present scenario of Odisha in India, then what is the opportunity in collaboration, whether it can be possible, then what is the opportunity. First is the background. Odisha has seen substantial growth in the field of technical education from 1 engineering college in 1956 to almost 105 engineering colleges in 2010. After 2010, hardly no engineering college come up. At present in Odisha, there are more than 250 technical colleges, where more than 5,000 crores are already invested, and more than 50,000 people are directly employed, and more than 2 lakhs people are employed indirectly in this sector, and moreover 96% of technical education in India, not only Odisha, are run by the private sector. That means almost less than 4% are in government sector, almost 96% technical education. Not only technical education means engineering, diploma, ITI, medical, and especially engineering and diploma, BTech, MTech and diploma, 96% are controlled by the private sectors. Mr. Nath is here. He is our JEE means Joint Entrance Examination in charge since last so many years. He can also elaborate a little more. So I just want to say the first engineering college in the state is University College of Engineering, was established in 1956 in Burla. Earlier it was University College of Engineering Burla. Now it is BSSTU. Then after 1956, the second engineering college, that is Regional Engineering College, that is earlier it was REC, set to come up in 1961. Later on it converted to NIT, National Institute of Technology. So first college is 1956, then second is 1961. Then followed, both are government, followed by College of Engineering and Technology, Bhubaneswar, CET in 1981. Then Indira Gandhi Institute of Technology, Sarang, 1982. The first self-financed engineering college in the state, that is Odisha Engineering College, was established in 1986. The main promoter is Mr. Elect Kaminikanta Patnaik. He is the pioneer in setting up technical engineering college, technical colleges in Odisha. The first technical college in 1986. Then Odisha School of Mining, one diploma engineering college by Government of Odisha, converted to degree engineering college in 1995. Then in 1996, 3 were addition, 3 of self-finance, all are private engineering college. Then 7 in 1997. Then 1 in 1998, then 8 in 1999, 7 in 2001, 3 in 2002, and another then in 2008, maximum is almost 40. So at present, there are 8 government engineering colleges, then 91 private engineering colleges, and in 8 engineering colleges there is an intake capacity of almost 2,130, then 91 private engineering colleges intake capacity almost 40,013, almost 40,000. Then there are 13 private engineering diploma school by government, intake capacity almost 3,300. Then there are 87 diploma schools, intake capacity having 30,419. Then 2 architect colleges, then 1 film and TV institute, Government of Odisha, then there are 13 government MCA colleges and having intake capacity almost 472. There is 47 private MCA colleges having 3,345. Then there is 10 government MBA colleges having 640 intake. Then there are 61 private MBA colleges having 5,160 intake capacity. Then there are 582 ITI, this is called ITC, government ITI called ITA and private called ITC. Then there are 1 NIT, then 1 IIT, then 1 triple IT also Government of Odisha collaboration, IIT 1 Government of India. Then there are 2 deemed university, that is KIET and SOA University. Then 1 state private university, Centurion State Private University. So if you add everything, there are almost 55,000, because there are 2 deemed university and 1 state private university. We have no knowledge what is their intake capacity, but as per the government of AICTE guidelines, almost they have, I think they are taking average 3,000. So totally comes to almost, there are 55,000 almost engineering seat in Odisha. Apart from that, there is a OUT having 1,260 technical students are coming out with BSCAG and MSCAG. Then there are 3 government medical college, then 5 private medical college, now reduced to 4 medical college. Then there are 4 dental college, then 1 pharmacy college in government, there are 32 private pharmacy college, then private nursing there are 11, then nursing school around 17, then 1 college of hotel management, college of teachers training 14, government secondary training school also 35. So like that, almost 1.35 lakhs to 1.4 lakhs people are being trained every year in vocational skill in Odisha. So there are a lot of opportunity, and this is the scenario of Odisha. There is the availability of technical colleges, medical colleges, private colleges, nursing school. There are plenty available. So, and there are 5 types of technical college in Odisha. First is Constituent College, which is totally run by the, which are affiliated to and managed by the university. Then private self-finance college, that is affiliated to university. Then autonomous colleges, then state private university, then deemed university. There are 5 types of university in the present in Odisha, 5 types of different technical colleges in Odisha. And there are almost 17 different branches like automobile, aeronautical, biotechnology, chemical, mechanical, civil, electrical, then metallurgy, mining, materials, plastic engineering, then production engineering, textile engineering, agriculture engineering. So there are almost more than 17 branches also available in Odisha. And there are a lot of postgraduate courses also available, and there is a technical university in Odisha that is called B.G. Patna University of Technology. It was set up in 2003, established in 2002 by an act, and it started functioning from 2003, and controlling except this 2 deemed university and 1 state private university, except that NIT and IIT and triple IT, all are affiliated to B.G. Patnaik University of Technology. Earlier it was only Utkal University and Berhampur University and Sambalpur University. Then government decided to open a technical university, so we have a 1 technical university also. So this is the scenario, and at present in India there are almost 3,387 engineering colleges who are giving BTech degree. Intake capacity almost 16,71,186. That means every year India produce almost 16,70,000 engineers. Then almost there are more than 1,241 MCA colleges. Intake capacity almost 1,10,000. Then there are more than 2,500 MBA colleges in India. Intake capacity almost 3,66,000. There are almost 1,033 pharmacy colleges in India where intake capacity almost 89,000, almost approximately. So this is the scenario of Odisha and India, and there are a lot of opportunity. Second part is this is the present scenario of Odisha and India. Then regarding opportunity, there are a lot of opportunity in collaboration. We can collaborate, joint venture. We can our entrepreneur, our investor can go to Sri Lanka if there is a scope. They can establish also engineering college because you have expertise, because you have started private institution started from 1986. If there is any scope, then we can go and set up the colleges there also. If they are interested to set up here also, there is a lot of opportunity also. Because still there is a lot of gap. If you, as per the Government of India calculation, if you go as per 1 lakh population, how much engineer required, there is still lot of scopes. And there is lot of school, like you can exchange of student, exchange of teacher, then there are a lot of opportunity. Opportunity in investment, opportunity in student exchange, opportunity in R&D, opportunity in teacher professors exchange also, teachers exchange also. So you can think in that line for collaboration, because collaboration now is the only solution, because our present scenario, totally worldwide we must require almost emerging technology and their impact. Almost there are after that Government of India declares Skill India, Digital India, Make in India. After declaration Modi ji, there are lot of opportunity because technical education, the only education where your payback period is better. A parents and students, why they are interested for engineering? Because their payback after studying for 4 years, suppose you spend 4 lakh and within 4 years you can get back your money. That is called payback period. Because payback period is better, people are interested to study in technical education, because technical education any day better than a non-technical graduate, any day better than a non-technical graduate, because there are a lot of opportunity, especially in job sector, especially in entrepreneur sector, because technical graduate people feel is much more employable. So people are interested, that's why people are interested in technical line. So in my opinion, there are a lot of opportunity. We can explore the opportunity. As an entrepreneur, I can give you assurance there are a lot of scope. Once again, thanks to Kalinga Foundation for giving me the opportunity. Thank you, sir.
Is there any query? Please.
It's about educational collaboration, and now what Professor Anoma mentioned about student going abroad, Sri Lankan student going to European countries rather than coming to India. I'm thinking about developing a program like now in Western countries and in North America, they have this system called study abroad programs. Like a student goes to the host country, not for a complete duration of 3 or 4 years, but for a short period of time, like 1 month or 2 months, and complete the number of credits required by the home countries.
That scope available here also, sir. That scope in our university BPUT that is available, because you study 2 years here, study 2 years there, but you have to take a permission, because you have a lot of students are gone here to USA, and nobody come from USA to here, but people are go from here to USA, because there is a exchange program. There is a scope is available in that line also.
For technical education in Odisha, first part I would like to say that in Asia, 3 major countries where students are opting to go for study, that is Malaysia, Singapore and India. And in 2013, India became the most preferred country in the Asian countries, among the Asian countries for technical studies. So in Odisha, we have more than 50,000 BTech seats, more than 7,000 MBA seats, and many technical seats in MCA also available. So as far as number of seats is available, we have a lot of seats available in the state. And the discipline is quite rather we can stringent because of the many government norms in the admission process, in the academic activities, in the examination process. Student has to do a lot of hard work to go through the curriculum and then only they are getting the degree. And as far as in teaching our experience goes, students of our state are doing well in all the companies of the world, maybe Microsoft or Google or you say any of the companies. Even one of the mechanical student, my student, I know he is now heading the photo film division of Disney in USA. He is the head of that department. So students of this state are doing exceptionally well in throughout the world as far as job is concerned. That is the major thing is that the basic mathematics taught in the state is very strong, and the basic curriculum of the state, the discipline of the state as far as education is concerned is very strong. That's why whoever is getting a degree here is doing well later on in the life. This is the key to the success of the students, we can say. A stringent academic activity during the study may be repelling to the student for a temporary period, but it is beneficial for throughout his life. If a candidate is going through a very strict academic curriculum, strict discipline, later on he will prosper like anything, because he can find any hindrance on the way of life, he can overcome that successfully. That is the key point of the state, we can say. And as far as our AICTE guidelines is there, we have three kinds of admission we can have in the state. That is PIO, we say it is persons of Indian origin, PIO. Those are the Indian citizens at any time during forefathers also. If they are now abroad, they can take this opportunity of studying in the state. Foreign nationals also can study in the state. We have 15% supernumerary seat to the available seats where we can take the admission. This supernumerary seat is defined by Government of India. ICCR also is offering seats in those 15% seat. Suppose if 50,000 is our BTech seat, we can take 7,500 foreign national students in the state itself, among which ICCR can recommend students, Government of India as nominee can recommend students, as well as foreign nationals, and PIO can come to study here in the state. As far as fee structure is concerned, Odisha is very economical in technical fees. Our government institutions are offering around 30 to 40,000 fees to Indian currency, and private institution up to 1 lakh we are offering. So this is, we can say, very economical compared to any other countries in the world. And as far as, but the quality of education is also exceptionally well, because the students are getting placement in many of the good companies throughout the world. And Odisha being a very peaceful state, and if you emphasize on the cities, Bhubaneswar being a very economical city, it is offering all the metropolitan facilities, but it is very highly economical. Anybody from any economic section can come up and stay in Bhubaneswar and pursue his studies here. So I would like to request the Sri Lankan experts to see Bhubaneswar as a potential city of the state, and we have 55 engineering colleges itself in the city of Bhubaneswar on and around. In the Khordha district we are having 55 engineering colleges. So experimentally one can start the transaction in Bhubaneswar itself, where you have opportunity of all, rather we can say all high profile medical facilities and metropolitan life, as well as it is too economical to stay in the city. So one can look forward to have collaboration in all technical education of the state. And there are few more things available in the Government of India site also regarding the stipulations or the regulations of this one. And state government also plays a vital role in deciding the fee structure. And as we are having a very economical structure, one can appreciate the state government activity if foreign national students are coming to have studies here, over here in the state. Also universities are also offering MBA and MCA degrees in the state. They are also doing very well as far as these courses are concerned. One can take those opportunities as well. So thanking with this, I would like to thank Kalinga Lanka Foundation for inviting me to give an opportunity to talk to the people around here regarding the technical prospects available in the state. And we can look forward many foreign students coming over here. And some of the institutions we are finding PIO are coming, means persons with Indian origin are coming. Less number of foreign nationals are coming because lack of advertisement of the state, we can say rather. So we'll hope that this foundation will help in propagating our mission, that many students, foreign nationals, can come and stay peacefully and have their education here and do well in their future life. Thanks.
What percentage of our people are doing well in Asian, African and Latin American countries? That's the first question. Second question, what percentage of our trained people are coming back to Odisha and working here?
Trained persons coming back to Odisha, that is a crucial thing we can say. When a person get trained, if we classify the training in the India, suppose technically we will say suppose IITs are there, NITs are there, state colleges are there. So if you look at the point that when a candidate or a student is reading in IITs, whole world become his place of work. We cannot define or restrict him in the state that you have been graduating in IIT Bhubaneswar, you serve in the state. It is not possible. Because a talented person is doing well throughout the world. If we can take the example of Sam Petroda, who is the pioneer in developing telecommunication in India. He was brought up in Titlagarh, but his workplace was in USA based, and he contributed to the country in such a manner that whole revolution of this country was centralized based on one person's technology. We can say Sam Petroda was the pioneer of all this technical development in telecommunication in the country. It was a one-man show with the help of our ex-Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. He did all revolution in the country. So we will see that how technically people are getting talented, then they are contributing to the society. Whether they are serving in the state or in the country or in the world, it doesn't matter. We'll say when somebody is basically educated, how proficient he is in his education, that he is contributing well in the society. That is our point. So in Odisha we can say our economically it is viable that any section of the society can come and study. For example, if you see that engineering education in UK or USA, only rich persons can contribute to that much admission fees. Either you have 2400 to 100% in GRE, still then you need more than 15-20 lakhs to get admitted into an American university. But our only course fees is 50,000 in India if we are interested to have an engineering degree per year. So hardly 5 lakhs is enough to get a degree in the country. So these are the scenario if we can provide quality education with economical manner, that any section, all sections of the society can avail this education.
When we talk about technical education, do we include professional education like travel and tourism management, hotel management?
I would like to say that our AICT, the governing body for the country, it's saying that 15% seats are supernumerary to the available seats for admission of PIO as well as foreign nationals in all diploma, degree, postgraduate in engineering and technology, architecture and town planning, pharmacy, applied arts, MBA, MCA, hotel management and catering technology. All these are included in the technical courses or professional courses of the country, you can say. And regarding medical education, rules are a bit stringent because MCI is guiding those things. And I think MCI is not promoting foreign nationals to come for medical education now.
Regarding medical education, private medical colleges have come up, have started coming up in Odisha, as Binod Babu mentioned. Yes. Yeah. Why don't you? Binod Babu, you.
They are already covered. Still, then there are 5 private medical colleges. Then out of 5, 1 just recently this year closed, but now at present 4 private medical colleges.
We have a branch of the All India Institute of Medical Sciences here, but their admission will come through bilateral exchange program.
Absolutely.
It is coordinated by Government of India. So AIMS campus has come up. It has become operational. It is very close to Bhubaneswar. And regarding admission to private colleges, students are most welcome to join them directly. I would suggest for the Sri Lankan delegation kindly to convey to their government that a team of experts from their country can come and visit these institutions, and he could be the nodal point. Mr. Binod Das could be the nodal point. Let them see the institutions for themselves, then decide which are the colleges, which are the institutes which are fit to accept foreign students, and that could be a good starting point. Yeah.
All private colleges, especially private engineering colleges, are allowed to take 15%, as Professor Nath said. 15% are allowed to take foreign students. But in medical college, there are some restriction. They are not allowing because of the lack of shortage of doctors. Government of India not allowing foreign student in medical colleges. But in private colleges there are scores. In private medical also there is scope, but not in government colleges. But private medical colleges also there is also 15% seat reserved for the foreign students.
I think Mr. Vinod Das was having consultation with University of Pennsylvania, which is a Ivy League university. They were also in dialogue with Rajkumar College, Raipur, which happens to be my father's old alma mater, established in 1886. If University of Pennsylvania can have a memorandum of association and a collaboration in Odisha, why not Sri Lanka and Kalinga?
Right.
This may kindly be explored. I think there are possibilities.
And I understand that I am supposed to sum up and add a few comments as I have understood the discussion. Now we started with Professor Ajit Mahanti, who thought language could be a good link for collaborations between the two countries. And he has stressed the fact that in Odisha, the three language formula that is used, mother tongue based multilingual formula, is something similar that Sri Lanka uses, and the development of textbooks, teachers training of the trainers, electronic digital material development, and teaching training in tribal areas in primary and secondary level could be a way forward to look at in terms of policy framing and consultancy. This is what I understood as the major point that Professor Mahanti made. I also thought that these issues of expertise in multilingual mother tongue based education could be a way that we could discuss and can have togetherness in terms of formulations of we may be able to learn things from Sri Lankan counterparts, or they can learn things from us in this. Mr. Vinod Das outlined extremely lucidly the opportunities in technical education and higher education in particular in this state of Odisha. Now, I think a lot of discussion has gone on to this, and it's a fact that India and Odisha have become a reasonably good hubs for technology education, engineering education, medical education in the world, at least in this part of Asia. And the costs are highly reasonable if you compare, without diluting the dollar, if you compare with US education or European education, you get quality education in extremely reasonable value, for extremely reasonable value. And that is one of the good points. The other point which I would like to add into here, that for foreign students, Sri Lankan or anybody coming here would need extremely good international hostels. And fortunately, the technical universities and colleges have first-rate staying facilities, student facilities, and that is one of the plus points that all the private institutions that I have, the universities that we have here have, and therefore they may offer very comfortable situation apart from good education. The third part which Dr. Singhdeo mentioned is how do we work it out. Now private colleges, as he has said, all over India have a quota for foreign students, NRI students. But where there are good government institutions, I think memorandum of association or MOU would be a right way, and that would be a way to have for going forward. Medical education or engineering education, this would be, in fact, for most of the Gulf countries, Indian healthcare industry is considered to be the best at the cost that they pay here. So, education to my mind in that way would be coming into that category. And I think Odisha has lot of infrastructure, lot of scope for students to come and have quality education. The credit transfer system in engineering is available now, and even I will only add that the credit transfer system in the general education, general higher education is coming because the University Grants Commission has now insisted that the choice-based credit system be implemented, and from this year most of the colleges have gone on for the choice-based credit system, and a credit transfer policy has to be established, but I think that is only a bureaucratic thing which we are working towards it, and they will happen. And therefore that is something which can be worked on, and they can come and do 3 credit course in summer, or in the 6 months they can do something like 9 credit and carry the credit with them. Particularly I would think in art and culture, this would be a good way of supplementing each other. So I would like to see from the discussion student exchanges with credit transfer, faculty exchanges where the faculty can do joint research, joint training and produce international standard papers, joint research topics both in science and social science, humanities, linguistics, art and culture. Particularly in Odisha, there is something very good that is available, which is the agricultural sciences. Now it is a very strong subject that is available, technical subject. The university is extremely good, at par with anything that you have in India, and Odisha has something God has given, a fantastic biodiversity, and therefore the field of agriculture, leaving aside the conventional agriculture, has enormous scope of research, and you would think you would find somewhere an Israel-like situation where the deserts bloom, and somewhere you would have a Ceylon-like situation where you have this farming, staircase farming, where there is plenty of water and you still use most of them. So I would think that agricultural sciences, biotechnologies, natural sciences, mathematics, as I think somebody mentioned, we somehow happen to be very strong in fundamental mathematics, and these would be the areas where we can collaborate. Immediate way forward, I agree. I think a most sensible suggestion is send some university professors from Sri Lanka to here who can discuss with their counterparts there, and it would be beneficial for them and us. Unless it is beneficial to both, it would not work. It would become like we go to USA and then come back. Don't want that. And therefore, I believe that the next step must be we should establish some kind of MOUs with the university for student exchange during vacations with some credit mechanism, skill trainings, and let the professors come visit, and we'll try to find ways and means of sending our teams of professors to you. So I believe this has been a very informative session. I hope something comes out of it. Thank you very much. We now close the session.